This morning we have the pleasure of talking to Kenneth Timmerman, who is an expert on the Middle East, expert to the point that in 1982 he was actually held hostage by the Palestinian Liberation Organization in Beirut for a while. So he has actual on-the-ground, or shall we say in the basement, experience with the Middle East, and he has been working in the Middle East ever since then, or with the Middle East, I guess I should say. He's especially, I see here, is president and CEO of Foundation for Democracy in Iran. He's a Nobel Peace Prize nominee for 2006. During the Trump administration, he was National Security and Foreign Policy Advisor on the board, the National Security and Foreign Policy Advisory Board. And also he has experience in running for Congress in Maryland in 2012. So good morning, Ken. Welcome to the King's Report.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so things are really popping in the Middle East now. No one remembers Ukraine anymore. I guess that's a country that's still at war, but I'm not sure. I have to check my Google search to see if that's still going on. I'm just being a little bit facetious here. Of course, it's going on. But let's talk about Israel. A number of people have talked about various ways in which this could escalate beyond what it is right now, beyond the Gaza Strip and Israel and Hamas in Israel. And you, in your email to us, pre-interview email, brought up a very interesting point that Putin, Russia's President Putin, may work with Turkey to send some sort of supplies, I guess humanitarian supplies in quotations, from Syria into Gaza, which would be an interesting situation since the U.S. Sixth Fleet there with the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford sitting there, presumably preventing that kind of thing from happening. Is this really a realistic possibility, do you think?
Well, it's something that the Turks have done in the past. In 2010, they sent a flotilla to Gaza. They called it the Gaza Flotilla, trying to break Israel's naval blockade on Hamas and on Gaza. And it turned out that they sent unarmed militants, but they were trained to use 6-foot metal bars, steel bars, when the Israelis roped down from their helicopters to interdict them. They smashed them in the face. They threw them overboard. There were people, grievously wounded. The Israelis were given instructions not to fire live ammunition, and they paid the price for it. So, yes, Turkey has done this before. Remember that the Turkish regime of Erdogan is a Muslim Brotherhood government, and Hamas is one of the main branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. So they certainly see eye to eye on this, and Turkey has been really saber rattling at Israel since the beginning of the conflict on October 7th.
I can see why Putin might want to do this, since Turkey is a member of NATO. So I'm sure Putin would be very happy to see a conflict, NATO versus NATO, the Turkish flotilla versus the U.S. Sixth Fleet occurring in the Eastern Mediterranean. That would be something.
It would. And my real fear is that Biden is basically going to give them a pass. He has agreed to humanitarian aid, in quotes, going into Gaza. We do not know yet how much of this aid has been commandeered by Hamas. They are looking for fuel so they can power up the generators that they use for those tunnels that go beneath the borders into Israel, and where we believe that they are holding many of the Israeli hostages. So the Biden administration seems to be deterred by Iran, by Putin, by Turkey, instead of deterring them.
So it's the Biden administration is being deterred, not deterring others. That's interesting. Now, I want to ask you about the Hezbollah in the southern Lebanon region. The conflict there with Israel on that border, I believe, has been escalating over the last few days. And I'm wondering if Hezbollah really is going to see this as an opportunity for them to strike Israel from the north.
Well, they've already been striking. Okay, so there have been rocket attacks. There have been limited incursions across the border by small groups of Hezbollah commandos. The Israelis have a significant amount of armor and 155 millimeter Paladin self-propelled howitzers up there in the fields of Galilee. I've been in that area. I was reporting for Newsmax in 2006 in an earlier war between Hezbollah and Israel. The Israelis are well prepared. They have even evacuated the towns along the border, Metula, and places, all the way across Route 99 across that northern border. And they've gone down to Kiryat Shimona, which is quite a bit further away from the border, a town of 26,000. They've evacuated all of it to prevent the kind of situation that they had in Gaza, where the guerrilla fighters cross the border, kill civilians, snatch civilians, take them back as hostages.
Well, it sounds like you think that Israel is capable of fighting a two-front war if it comes to that.
I think Israel is capable of fighting a two-front war. They've been prepared for this for quite some time. There could ultimately be a third front with Iranian forces in Syria or directly with Iran itself. There you're talking about very, very significant escalation. But Israel knows that in fighting Hamas and in fighting Hezbollah, they're already fighting Iran. So this is already a war between the Iranian regime and Israel, but the Iranians are trying to pretend that it's their proxies and that these proxies are not under their direct command. The Israelis know what's going on. I think it's pretty clear the United States ought to know what's going on, even though the White House has given into this Alice in Wonderland version that Hamas is an independent organization and is able to launch a huge cross-border massacre as they did on October 7th without the Iranians knowing about it, without the Iranians giving their approval, without the Iranians funding it, without the Iranians giving logistic support.
Now, on Monday, a group of Republicans wrote a letter to Defense Secretary Austin asking him to come to Congress next Monday to testify about American weapons falling into the hands of Hamas and other terrorist groups. Weapons that the U.S. left behind in Afghanistan, weapons that were, I guess, taken from the U.S. forces or U.S. backed forces. I'm sorry, Freudian slip there. Backed forces in Ukraine. Got to keep these proxies straight. Okay, in Ukraine. How much has the debacle in Afghanistan contributed to what's happening today in Gaza and Israel?
Well, I think more even than the weapons, and it was a significant amount of weapons that the United States just abandoned in Afghanistan. $85 billion is the figure that I've heard most frequently. A lot of equipment, but the equipment is less important than the other far more valuable thing that we left behind in Afghanistan, which was our credibility. The United States lost completely our credibility. We lost our deterrence in Afghanistan, and that is we are paying the price for that. We've been paying the price for that ever since. The attack by Hamas was, in a way, an attack against U.S. credibility. They took U.S. hostages, knowing that we were not going to strike them, and believing that Biden would actually try to put the handcuffs on Bibi Netanyahu. And we now know that in that brief trip that Biden made to Israel, the initial reports were that he said all the right things and he supported Israel and he supported Israel's right to go into Gaza and to root out Hamas. Well, no, we're now learning that that's not the case, that in fact, he was trying to get Netanyahu to delay the ground offensive and possibly even to cancel it entirely. He was trying to get Netanyahu to open up these humanitarian corridors, which he has done. Humanitarian aid is now going through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. And again, as I said earlier, we don't know how much of that is winding up in the hands of Hamas. They have a history of commandeering humanitarian aid, whether it's from the UN or from the European Union, and either selling it or, in the case of the EU, The EU provided something like $600 million worth of water pipes and water installations to help bring clean drinking water to the people of Gaza. Well, Hamas has been digging up those pipes, gleefully taking videos of this and transforming them into rockets. So, they have a great history of taking humanitarian aid and using it for military purposes.
It's tragic. That when Biden took over the White House, the Democrats gleefully said, okay, now the world is going to respect America again, implying that the world did not respect America when Trump was in the White House. But actually, the opposite is true. The people like Hamas and Iran respected America when Trump was in the White House. But now there is no respect, there is no credibility given to the United States. It's really one of the tragic consequences of what happened in November 2020 and January 2020 as well. So I guess right now the big question is, okay, Iran right now is trying to pretend that they're not directly involved in this. At what point, though, will they become involved? What point will they say, okay, now it's time for the big guns to come out. We're going to start attacking Israel directly from Iranian soil?
Well, I think that is the big question. And everybody's trying to figure out when Israel will strike Iran, because at some point they will have to strike Iran. And in that case, how will the Iranians respond? I think what the first step before we go there is going to be Hezbollah. And if Iran unleashes Hezbollah to a massive missile strike, for example, on Israel, the estimates of Hezbollah's missile resources vary quite dramatically, from something like 70,000 to 150,000 missiles and rockets. The overwhelming majority of them are unguided rockets, but they do have several thousand guided missiles, most likely several thousand from the estimates that I've been reviewing recently. And those are long-range missiles that can reach all three of Israel's, the three biggest cities, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Haifa. And they are accurate missiles. They have a circular error probability of around 10 meters, 30 feet, which means that they can basically hit they can hit targets, they can hit buildings, they can hit military installations. Whereas in the previous rocket attack that I saw in 2006, it was kind of up it goes, and where it lands, nobody knows. Well, that's not going to be the case if Hezbollah launches those highly accurate missiles in this war. If they do, this is going to escalate dramatically, rapidly. The Israelis will not just launch airstrikes, but they will go in on the ground into Lebanon. They will smash Lebanon's infrastructure. They have been warning the Lebanese government about this. Again, Prime Minister Netanyahu was up on the Lebanese border on Sunday, I believe it was, talking to the troops, but also warning Lebanon not to allow Hezbollah to unleash its missile forces.
Now, I haven't updated myself on Lebanon for, actually, I have to admit, for a number of years, but the last time I checked, Lebanon was kind of a client state of Syria. Is that still the case?
No, it is now a client state of Iran, of the Iranian regime. And Hezbollah dominates the security forces. They are in the government. They are a minority now in the parliament, but only by a couple of votes. And the real problem is that they have forged a pact, and this goes back a number of years, with Michel Aoun, who recently left office as president. The Maronite Christian president of Lebanon has been in bed with Hezbollah, and I've known General Aoun for many years. He's had dinner in my house in Washington, D.C. I've gone to visit him many times in Lebanon. And when he first started dallying with Hezbollah in 2007, 2008, I went to deliver a message to him from the White House at that point in 2007, from Bush 43, from the White House, about Hezbollah. And it was essentially this: you can forge an alliance with Hezbollah, or you can be an ally of the United States, but you cannot be both. And he said, that's okay. I like Hezbollah. And so he made his bed many years ago, and now he's lying in it. And he's not changing. And that is the problem that we have, is that you have a portion of the Christian Maronite community in Lebanon in bed with Hezbollah. And that is an alliance that's going to be very difficult to break. And it's a deadly alliance for the people of Lebanon.
Mm-hmm. And for the people of Israel as well, perhaps.
Yes.
Now, something called a peace conference was held in Egypt recently, where Egyptian president, of course, Jordan's King Abdullah, and Mahmoud Abbas of Palestinian Authority. Turkey was also there, and actually a lot of other countries were there. Was this a credible effort towards peace?
Well, when you have the aggressor, in this case Hamas, trying to sue for peace, it's kind of like, look, I've launched a sneak attack. Now let me get away with it.
Right.
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to prevent Israel from punishing them for the most devastating attack on Jews since the Holocaust. If you put the 1,400 Israeli deaths, dead Israelis, on a scale with the U.S. population, it's the equivalent of 49,000 Americans. It is an unbelievable slaughter that Hamas carried out. And so what they're trying to do is gather together the usual suspects to prevent Israel from retaliating for that attack. It's not going to succeed, but I'm very disappointed to see that two countries, Egypt and Jordan, that have signed peace treaties with Israel, would go along with this.
Mm-hmm. And even Canada sent someone there, I think a foreign minister or something like that, attended that conference from Canada. Well,
Canada, with Justin Trudeau, has become, I guess, in a way, a member of that third world alliance.
Yes. And of course, Cher promises us this time, she really, really, really means it, that she's going to leave America, I guess go to Canada, if President Trump gets back into the White House. So, yeah, Trump.
I wish Cher would take a lot of other Hollywood celebrities along with her.
Well,
they really want to do.
They've promised this before, but they've yet to actually. I don't know why.
They should go to Nigeria, or maybe Benin, or possibly Cambodia. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they could go to Gaza. That would be a nice place to relocate.
There you go. Yes, Gaza. All right. Getting back to more serious stuff. So I guess, on the King's report, we want peace. We know Israel needs to do what it needs to do. And like you said, Hamas needs to be punished. They are a criminal organization that has committed a crime, and they need to bear the consequences of that. And they cannot get away with this. Basically, in sort of a street language, they've got their cred, right? They've got their credibility by killing more Jews in a single day than any day since the Holocaust, and that has got to give them some credibility in that world, in that in the dark side of international relations. And Israel needs to show that there are consequences to such an action. And yes, civilians will suffer, but that is, one of the consequences of actually the civilians electing Hamas to the position where they are in right now. Anyway, so where is this going to go, though? Where is this going to go? Is I guess Israel at some point, I suppose, they're going to do a ground offensive against Gaza, despite whatever the White House may want to say. And what is the Middle East going to look like after this is all over?
Well, that's a very good question. I think Israel, first and foremost, Israel has to reestablish its credibility. It has to make sure that Iran in particular understands it cannot launch this type of strike against Israel ever again. Mm-hmm. And the way that they reestablish that credibility is first by going into Gaza and rooting out Hamas. They have to kill the Hamas leaders. They have to destroy their underground manufacturing plants for these missiles and rockets that they're using. And then I think they have to do what they did after the 1972 massacre at the Munich Olympics, where they unleash Mossad to go after the Hamas leaders who are living in Qatar, in Doha, who are living in Tehran. And Israel has shown repeatedly that they know how to organize this type of operation. So I expect that is going to happen as well. Now, I don't believe that Israel is going to launch military strikes against Iran at this point, although I think they should. But I don't think that they will, because they do not need to have that wider war before they have beaten Hamas and eventually Hezbollah. So I think the Israelis are going to go step by step. They're going to try to keep Hezbollah out of the war. If they can't, if they don't succeed in keeping Hezbollah out, then they will fight a two-front war. But the first front will be Hamas. They will try to keep Hamas from being able to do any serious damage to them first, and then they will go after Hezbollah. But again, this is about Israel's credibility and their deterrence. So they have to strike hard. They have to strike hard to make Iran understand they cannot attack them again.
One unfortunate thing is that Arab nations such as Saudi Arabia, and as you mentioned, Jordan and Egypt have come down very heavily on the side of Hamas, it would seem, in this conflict. Even though Jordan and Egypt already have peace treaties with Israel, Saudi Arabia was well on its way towards having some sort of a rapprochement with Israel. What really caused this about face on the part of the Arab countries? They must know that Hamas has done wrong and that Hamas needs to face the consequences.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And as far as the Saudis are concerned, I think the timing of the Hamas attack was for sure dictated by Iran as they were looking at those talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia. They were very close to success. Both the Israelis and the Saudis were saying this publicly. Netanyahu said this at the UN General Assembly in September. He said, we are very, very close to achieving a deal with Saudi Arabia, a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. That would have transformed the Middle East in a dramatic way, in a very positive way. And the Iranians were terrified of that, because that would have marginalized them and made them the odd man out. So that is, I think, what explains the timing of the Hamas attack on Israel. It was aimed to torpedo those talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia. As for Egypt and Jordan, again, I am disappointed that they joined into this, but I think they are both really obeying the sentiment in the what's called the Arab Street. And I've had to do battle with some of these monsters from Middle East academia and journalists who I mean, they're Neanderthals living in caves. They're still talking about the Israeli occupation of Gaza for crying out loud. You know, I had to go on one of these shows and say, you know, the first time I went to Gaza was in 1994. And do you know who I went to go interview? Yeah, it was Yasser Arafat. What was Yasser Arafat doing in Gaza in 1994? Well, he was running the place because Israel had just signed the Oslo Accords, handed Gaza over to the PLO. Israel retained tiny little greenhouse settlements in the northern part of Gaza, way out of the city of Gaza. They handed those over in 2005. There's not a centimeter of Gaza that has been occupied by Israel since. And between 1994 and 2005, it was, you know, I don't know how many hundreds of meters, but it was not a lot of territory. And there weren't any Palestinians in those greenhouses. Of course, the first thing the PLO did when they took it over was to smash the greenhouses. But anyhow, on the Arab Street, what I'm trying to say is the mood has been very anti-Israeli, it's been anti-Semitic. It has been driven by Muslim anti-Semitism, Islamic anti-Semitism. This is at the core of Islamic ideology. I wrote a book about this in 2002, just after the 9/11 attacks, called Preachers of Hate, Islam and the War in America. We don't understand that in the West. We do not understand that Islam at its core is fundamentally anti-Semitic. They want to kill Jews.
Yes. Because people will say that, well, you know, most Muslims are peaceful, but then they counter to that as well. Yeah, during World War II, most Germans were peaceful too. That's certainly a problem that Muslims themselves need to face and to deal with very seriously. Yeah, I think you've given us,
and some have,
mm-hmm.
and some have, for sure. And the Iranians are very worried about somebody like Mohammed bin Salman, who has really tried to root out the worst of the anti-Semitic Muslim preachers of hate from Saudi mosques. He's made an effort to do that, and he has talked about the Holocaust, and he's talked about cooperating with Israel, with signing a peace treaty with Israel, and commerce with the Jewish state. And that is what really terrifies Islamic regimes like those in Turkey, in Iran, and it's what terrifies leaders like King Abdullah in Jordan, who is, the Hashemite monarchs have always been sitting on a powder keg. The country is majority Palestinian, and the rest of them are Bedouins, so they're very worried whenever there's violence in the West Bank or Hamas that they are going to get as well.
Well, I keep looking at the clock because I don't want to keep you, too long. But this is so interesting. It's so important. I'm wondering, can it be a strategic objective for Israel in this conflict that, okay, Hamas started this fight, we're going to end it, and when it ends, Iran is not going to have any influence on any force that is on the border of Israel, whether it be Hamas or whether it be Gaza or whether it be southern Lebanon. We're going to wipe out the Iran's influence around Israel. Possible?
That ought to be Israel's goal. And it ought to be the goal that all Israelis can unite around, because they understand that Iran is the force of evil driving these attacks. Will the Israeli government have the wherewithal and the firepower to be able to do this? I'm not sure. I am absolutely convinced that the Biden administration will do everything they can to keep Israel from striking Iran. They do not want to do this for reasons that would take too long to explain here, but you can go to my website, kentimmerman.com, and I've written about this quite a bit. The Biden Democrats, the Obama-Biden Democrats, feel that the Islamic regime in Tehran is their natural ally. Mm-hmm. And they do everything to protect them, to coddle them, to enable them, to enhance their power, while doing whatever they can to limit Israel and to put the state of Israel in a box. This is a very unhealthy situation, and that's what Netanyahu is facing. Can he strike Iran the way that he must do, prevent them from ever attacking Israel again?
Thank you for reminding us about your website. And I should have done this at the beginning, but you've written 12 books of nonfiction, the most recent of which is And the Rest is History, Tales of Hostages, Armed Dealers, Dirty Tricks, and Spies, which is available from Post Hill Press. And also, I guess you're also writing a very different book now about something about raising olives in Provence in the south of France.
That's my just for fun book. It's what I do when I come back from the horrors of war, the horrors of the Middle East. I come back to refuge, really, in the south of France. I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's a book about love, about faith, about faith in God and the saving grace of Jesus, and it's a book about some crazy, wonderful French people in and around the area that I live by Saint-Tropez and Saint-Maxime and Nice. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Okay.
But it is a relaxation away from the horrors of the Middle East. It'll be out by Christmas time.
Well, I'm glad that you have some place to go to reconnect with Jesus and to reconnect with the sanity and reality that God represents and Jesus represents. Yes.
Amen to that. Amen to that. That's exactly what it is. It is coming back to the real world from the world of horrors made by man.
And as I understand, if we go to kentimmerman.com, we can become beta readers of that book. Is that right?
You can. You're going to have to contact me quickly because those ranks are filling up fast.
Okay. All right. I'll hurry on over there then. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's been a tremendous opportunity for us to learn what's really going on in the Middle East right now, because it's going to affect all of us. Thank you, and
my pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.